Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. Today you join me in the 2025 Tesla Model 3. Now, this refresh has brought some great additions to the Tesla and also I think some real quality of life improvements and just in general quality of the vehicle. Just the fit and finish just feels nicer, more solid, and inside the cabin much quieter too. So I'm here to talk you through it and see whether it's worth it compared to some of its key rivals, which are now very competitively priced. So the new Model 3 starts from around £40,000 here in the UK, and that's for a rear-wheel drive model with standard range of 318 miles. Still relatively quick though, 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds and 245 horsepower. They weigh between 1.7 and 1.8 tons, so they're definitely not the heaviest EVs on the market either. Step up another £5,000, you're looking at the long range model with 436 miles, and another £5,000 gets you the all-wheel drive model, which is faster, 4.2 seconds to 60, and also has 390 miles of range, so not too bad at all. And there's also a performance model available for 60 grand, which has 328 miles of range, all-wheel drive, and has some exclusives. They say up to 460 horsepower, but I've heard testing says that it's more than that. Does 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, which is absolutely blistering. Has 20-inch alloys as standard, also a track mode, and also sports seats and adaptive suspension. But the standard car which I'm in here today, this one is just a rear-wheel drive, standard range, the base model. And for 40 grand, I do think you do actually get a really good value. The good thing about Tesla is pretty much all of your kit is included as standard. The only things you need to worry about upgrading is adding a tow bar or adding full autopilot. Everything else is pretty much included. So you get a 15.4-inch infotainment display, which basically controls all of the function of the cars. And yes, it does mean that there aren't any climate controls physically, and you do have to go in there to open the frunk and also open the glove box and things like that. But it's actually more intuitive than you might think, and Tesla just seem to get it right when it comes to this stuff. When you've got the Tesla app installed on your phone, you literally just walk up to the car and open it, walk away from it, it locks automatically, and it sets up to your preference. So it's super easy to use. You get auto steer and adaptive cruise control as standard, but you can step it up for £3,400 to enhanced autopilot, or for nearly 7 grand, the full self-driving function, which still has some limitations in certain countries. Me, I'm not too fussed about that. I think the standard car is just fine. Thing is with going Tesla as well is it is a little bit cheaper than some of the competition now. Of course, you've got things like the Hyundai Ioniq 6, which is kind of in this price range. BYD Seal is another good option if you want something a little bit more traditional. The Polestar 2, although I'm not too keen on the infotainment in that, and the Volkswagen ID.7 is also a good car too. They've made some nice enhancements to this new model. It's sharper at the front, which means that it's got a better drag coefficient, so it's around 10% more efficient than the previous model. I've got a full video on my channel of this and the older model side by side, so do feel free to check that out if you want a more in-depth comparison. But there are some other niceties, such as acoustic glass all round now, rather than just on the front like in the old car. You've also got an 8-inch touchscreen in the back as standard now, across the range, which is really cool because it's got the theatre mode stuff on there, so you can watch Netflix and things back there, and also games installed as well for the kiddies. Now the good thing about that is if you're watching something back there, you can use headphones just for that rear screen, or if you want to, you can even play it just through the rear speakers, which is pretty cool, have that separation. They've also added some ambient lighting, which really lifts the cabin, and also some contrasting in the models with just the black interior, and the performance ones have carbon trim as standard. Now, simplicity is key with Tesla, but they have gone a little bit overboard on this one, I think. So, no more indicator stalk and no more drive select stalk. Instead, what you've got is buttons on the steering wheel for your indicators, which I know sounds horrifying, but actually you do get used to quite quickly. I can't say I love it, and I can't say that I'd want to live with it day to day, but actually it's not as bad as you think. The only thing is, obviously, annoyingly, when the wheel is turned, it can get a little bit fiddly and confusing which button you need to press, and they're capacitive buttons too. Also, your drive select now is a slider on the touchscreen, which again sounds terrible, but actually works quite well, and it does predict which drive mode you need to be in based on the cameras and sensors, so you can use that a bit like on the Model S as well. It takes some getting used to, but actually it's not too bad, to be honest. Slide it forward, slide it back, and there is a manual override as well on the headliner. There's some capacitive buttons for park, reverse, neutral drive up there as well, if so you need it. But I don't know, I do prefer the older Tesla Model 3 with regards to that. Just having the stalks there, I think really doesn't add too much clutter to the cabin, and I prefer it. And they seem to be going back on it slightly with the new Model Y as well, so maybe they realise that it's not for everyone. But yeah, I could go on about that central infotainment screen forever. Effectively, you've got all the functions that you would need from Apple CarPlay and Android Auto baked in there, but you don't have those options available. So you just use the apps that are built into the display. You've got Spotify, Apple Music, you've also got theatre mode, which has Netflix, Disney Plus. You've got some gimmicks on there like changing the map into the Mars rover, and also you've got like a Rainbow Road mode, which looks like something off of Mario Kart. You've got a romance mode, which puts on some sexy music and a fireplace. There's so many different things on there to choose from, and lots of things to play around with. There's even like a drawing, like a sketch pad. There's so many gimmicks and so many cool features that you don't really see on other cars. The maps works really well. It's comparable to some of the leading ones, I would say. And also another plus from that as well is that you actually get the Tesla Supercharger network pre-installed on there. So it kind of tells you where you need to stop on a long journey, which makes things really easy rather than having to manually plan it yourself. Range is pretty class leading, let's be honest. And whilst you might not like not having a heads-up display or a screen for your drive select, actually it does kind of get used to it quite quickly, and realistically you can see most of it in the corner of your eye anyway, because it's kind of at the top corner of the screen. The screen is a little bit better on this newer model than the previous one. It's got smaller bezels and it's just a little bit more responsive. They have upgraded that over the years as well. And I normally whinge about having to control climate controls and car functions through the screen, but Tesla just seems to know how to do it. It's all just so intuitive and really easy to get used to. Literally 10 minutes in this thing, and as long as you know how to work an iPad, you know how to work this car. You've got some revised cup holders and some central storage, which is decent, and 2 wireless phone chargers, which work really well, and also some storage bins in the door. Now, the glove box seems to have shrunk in size, which is a shame, but it's not really a space that I would consider practical anyway. You've got plenty of space in the front and also quite a large boot. Of course, it's not going to be as practical as something like a wagon, like an estate or something, but as long as you're not too fussed about that, then there's still plenty of usable space, including a large well in the floor. You can get those seats down as well, and you've got ISOFIX points in the back. They've also revised the rear bench seating in this so that actually it's a little bit more practical in terms of thigh support. It's got a slightly steeper angle to it, and I think it is a little bit more comfortable. Also a completely flat floor and 65-watt USB-C power delivery for charging even laptops. The sound system included in this is phenomenal as well. 17 speakers, 2 amps and 2 subwoofers, and it really cranks. So when you're listening to your Spotify or your Apple Music or your, Netflix or whatever it might be in the car, it sounds absolutely great, and you know that all cars have that installed. It's quite an engaging thing to drive as well. Even the rear-wheel drive model, you can feel it's quite playful, and you do get a bit of texture through that steering. You can adjust the weight of the steering through the screen as well. I don't think it's quite as kind of engaging to drive as something like a BMW i4, but again, simplicity is the key in this car, and that's what you're really getting. Even as a petrol head though, I still find it quite fun to drive, and the range is really good, which means that actually you won't be panicking too much. So even pulling uphill here, there's so much torque. They've really tightened it up a little bit. There's been some suspension tweaks on this newer model, and you can really feel it as well. Like, it definitely just feels a little bit more solid, and overall interior fit and finish has marked an improvement as well. Gone are the days where Tesla just feels a little bit clunky and unfinished. You've got a bit more of a substantial thud to the doors now when you close them as well, which is nice. It feels like there's more heft to them, and it feels like there's a bit more sound insulation there too. Something like a Mustang Mach-E would be a little bit more fun to drive as well, and a bit more practical, but I don't know, I just don't think the tech's as good. I think Tesla does the technology and the user experience the best, and I think they're still class leading in that respect. And yes, you do make sacrifices for that, but I don't necessarily think they're the end of the world. Overall space in the cabin is good, driving position is good, and visibility is not too bad out of the back, and the cameras are great too. You've got Sentry cameras all around the car which constantly monitor it. As for the styling, I do really like it. I think the design changes they've made have been really nice. On the back it's now the Tesla word instead of the logo, which I think looks better, and also the rear tail lights now kind of are more integrated and they sweep round, which I think look really good. And the front lights, they're kind of more chiseled, and you just got that kind of more streamlined look to it. I do prefer it. I think it looks really cool, and it's still identifiable as a Model 3. It's not lost its overall shape, but in terms of the actual car itself, the only things carried over from the previous one are the doors and the rear quarter panels. Everything else is new, and you can really tell it's definitely a nice refresh. The ambient lighting inside really lifts the cabin as well. I think it's a nice touch, and you can see that Tesla is taking on feedback from their owners. Now, do I love that it's oversimplified? No. Again, like, I do find the indicators a little bit annoying and gimmicky and certain things like that, and I do wish sometimes for a head-up display rather than having to glance at the corner of the screen, but it really is trade-offs that actually, when you sit in it and experience it, I don't think they matter that much. Even as a petrol head, I can really appreciate this car for what it is in terms of just a nice user experience. And I think that's what Tesla really stands for, is just that user experience and how easy it is to live with and how simple the app is, and it just works really super well. I do also really like one pedal driving. It makes for such an easy journey. And this is all stuff that can be tweaked through the menus. It's all very simple to use, and I do just find it less cluttered than a lot of the rivals. And yes, whilst you might be getting some more reliability elsewhere, you might be getting a slightly more rounded experience. I think if you like simplicity, if you are into technology, I think really the Tesla might be the option to go for, especially as you consider now that when you start speccing up some of those rivals, the Tesla Model 3 actually comes in a little bit cheaper. You get a 4-year, 60,000 mile warranty, and the battery is 6 years and 120,000 miles. So you've got plenty of coverage on there. It's nothing to really worry about, even if you end up buying one lightly used. The array of safety tech on there standard as well is really good. It shows you your average speed, it shows you how many remaining miles in an average speed zone, and it even shows you things like if you've got blind spot stuff going on, you know, even the cameras not appearing, you can still see what's in your blind spot because it comes up as animations on the screen. I spent this morning driving a previous Model 3, like the older model, and coming to this one, there is a noticeable improvement in terms of the kind of ambient sound in here. That one kind of did feel a bit more clunky. This one feels more refined, it feels more polished and solid. The doors have a more sort of satisfying thud to them. You know, in terms of the actual road noise, there's significantly less. Darren, the owner of this car, was telling me that actually he's saving already a few £100s a month on fuel, because charging this at home, you know, you're looking at peanuts if you've got an EV tariff. So if you've got access to that and the supercharger infrastructure as well, it means that long distance journeys aren't really too much hassle, especially compared to some other EVs as well. It's really compelling. If you want something similar to this, but a little bit more traditional in terms of interior layout and stuff like that, the BYD Seal might be a good option. But they are quite new and they've not got quite as much experience as Tesla in terms of fit and finish. The ID.7's pretty good too, although I'm not a massive fan of the infotainment system. And the Ioniq 6 actually I think is one of the best EVs that I've driven in terms of actual driving feel, as well as the BMW i4. But again, there's some trade-offs to be had there, and they're quite expensive when you start speccing them up. It then becomes almost like the Tesla Model 3 is a bit of a bargain. And I think this is one of those cars where if you've even started looking into it, if you're watching this video and listening to me right now, you're probably quite interested in them and kind of understand what they're about anyway. And if that's you, I would probably just go right ahead and buy one. Honestly, even a petrol head like me, yes, this is a little bit bland and a little bit, you know, like an appliance, a bit like a washing machine. It's just a tool. A little bit soulless maybe, but it's just a fantastic machine to live with day to day. And I think the trade-offs are probably worth it if you're thinking about one. I think even the base model is good enough, and now they've made some styling upgrades to the wheels and the body, I think it looks the part. And yes, everyone and their Uber driver has one of these nowadays, but I can see why. And as we wrap this up, I'm sitting on the M25 in traffic as per usual, but I've got one pedal driving, I've got all of these assistance features, the car's doing its own thing, and I'm just chilling out. So I don't really care. And if I was in my car, I'd probably have the hump right now. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to learn more about the older Model 3 or a comparison, or indeed some of this car's rivals, please check them out on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and thank you so much to Darren, who is actually my boss, for lending me this car today. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.